The story begins with the protagonist telling the students to watch carefully. He shows us an island, and there was a lot of water around it. The teacher showed the class snow, which surprised all the animals. The protagonist was a teacher who told that to do the same, it was necessary to condense and cool the water at the same time. These are A-rank spells that need to be activated at the same time. They can also practice and try. The octopus immediately called the teacher. She raised a tentacle and said that when she grows up, she wants to turn into a human. The protagonist understood her. Then she said that if she becomes human, she will marry Sensei. Then someone behind her said that it is not fair because she also wants to marry Sensei. The protagonist was surprised and asked why she wanted to become human. The octopus thought about it. She looked at herself and replied that she had 8 arms with these suckers. She was so different from people. She assumed that the protagonist was sick of her, and all the animals became very sad. The protagonist approached her and grabbed her cheeks. The girl said that the sensei would hate her while she was like this. The teacher said that it was not true. He looked at her carefully and added that this was a great opportunity to tell them his favorite quote. Later, we are shown a huge castle and many simple houses of ordinary people. This is a Mediterranean kingdom. Here we are shown the coat of arms of the Royal Academy, Manus Inium. In the building, 2 girls were walking down the corridor, and both were very tired. Then the blonde accidentally ran into the protagonist. The teacher apologized and asked if she was okay. She immediately screamed that it was disgusting because she had run into old man Vashio. She couldn't stand this old stench. The protagonist laughed a little sadly and thought that he wasn't that old. He didn't like it when they changed the kanji in his name to come up with names like that. Besides, he wasn't that old. And about the smell, he washes every day, his clothes are clean too, he washed everything yesterday. Right there they show us a beautiful girl with big balls. The protagonist, noticing her, realized that they were huge, but then he slapped himself to come to his senses. He was surprised, because he saw her for the first time, and wondered what kind of baggage she was carrying. The protagonist approached her and asked if she could find her class. The girl, seeing him, widened her eyes, which surprised the protagonist. The girl smiled and immediately hugged the protagonist. He was still surprised. But then he realized that her balls were very soft. He wondered if there was something fishy about why she was suddenly hugging a stranger, and again noted that they were very soft. He even thought it was a prank, something like, give old Vashio a hug and laugh at him. Then he added that her balls were amazingly elastic. The protagonist began to feel embarrassed and asked her if she could let him go, because everyone was looking at them strangely. All the students laughed at the teacher and thought it was disgusting. Then she moved away from him a little and touched him with her balls. She asked him if he knew where the principal's office was because she forgot to take a map of the school. Vashio was very embarrassed, but answered that it was next to the teacher's room on the 4th floor. He asked her if she could let him go. Then he added that there should be a card in her student ID. The girl heard him and was surprised and understood. She took out her huge suitcase and started to open it. She thought that her student ID should be here. She immediately looked at everything, and with tears in her eyes said that she had mixed it up. This suitcase was supposed to go to the dorm. She thought it was bad and didn't know what to do. If she didn't have a student ID, she would have problems. The protagonist immediately sat down next to her, which calmed her down a little. He said that they all make mistakes when they are in a hurry, and put his hand on her head. Vashio added with a smile on his face that if she kept a cool head, problems would be easier to solve, so she should be more careful next time. The girl was very surprised by this. She thanked him for the instruction, and the teacher added that even if she did not have one, she could go to the dean's office and ask for a new one, and asked not to worry. The girl began to fix her hair after the protagonist's hands, and repeated his words. Then he said that in his youth it was called a wolf. End quote. When he was an office plankton, this quote inspired him a lot. For example, when his data for a presentation was deleted, he was very panicked and did not know what to do. The girl was very surprised when she heard about the office plankton and wondered if it could be eaten. The protagonist was surprised and asked her to forget about it and apologized for talking about strange things. His face was quite sad, and the girl noticed it. She wondered if he didn't recognize her. Afterwards, the protagonist sat at the table and checked various students' work. An elf came up and told Vashio to take the intermediate magic test and not forget to correct them. The protagonist took the piece of paper and greeted Lemon Sensei. The protagonist said that he planned to clean the house today. Lemon was surprised by this and thought that it was just an excuse and told Vashio to find a better excuse next time. Lemon smiled and asked haughtily if Lemon thought that such a job was suitable for someone like him. Lemon would be busy with the Rubedo Magic Research Club. This year, under his leadership, they managed to win all the tournaments without any problems. It was only natural that the director was proud of the club's success, the protagonist thought, and scratched his head. He said that it would be an honor to be able to help the talented Lemon Sensei. The elf looked at Vashio very arrogantly. He quickly turned around and the protagonist realized that elf had simply laughed at him. Lemon looked at the protagonist as he left and thought that he was a pathetic person. Vashio stayed to finish Lemon's work. Later it was late at night and the protagonist was walking down the street. He passed a beer establishment and thought that he was exhausted and needed something to eat. He heard all these cheerful cries and thought. He immediately decided to pass by because he thought that he could not afford it now because he was broke. The protagonist came home and his elderly neighbor greeted the protagonist. Vashio was very surprised that she was not asleep yet and scared him. She handed him the bag and said that it was the leftovers from dinner. The protagonist smiled and apologized for the inconvenience. Grandma asked if he would get a wife already. She would wait for him every day with a delicious dinner. The protagonist laughed and replied that no one would marry a low-ranking and low-paid teacher like him. The grandmother laughed and said that he was right. She immediately wished him good night and left. Afterwards, the protagonist went into his room and sat down on the couch. He took a bite of his burger and simply plopped down on the bed. Then he thought about the words about his wife and went to wash himself. During this, he began to remember how 10 years ago he was an ordinary office plankton. He didn't have a girlfriend, and he spent his free time playing games. When he returned from work, he read collections of wolf quotes. In games, he began to be called an otherworldly hero. Afterwards, we are shown how the protagonist walked through a destroyed city and carried a huge spider. The protagonist was very angry because later the spider was taken from him and placed somewhere. It was a huge life support flask, which made the protagonist's face look scared. He immediately woke up and was very scared. As a result, he could not live up to the expectations placed on him. He became an ordinary professor at the Royal Academy. He started a new life in this world, but he didn't achieve anything outstanding. He couldn't even gather a harem. He's just an old man who knows how to use magic a little. The protagonist went out to the balcony to smoke and think about it all. Later, he remembered his class of beast monsters who treated the protagonist well. He put out his cigarette saying that these were the best times and that it was time to sleep. He remembered these moments with a smile on his face. Afterwards, it was morning, and the protagonist was inside the academy. He was almost late, and Lemon asked if he had washed his shirt before coming. The protagonist was surprised and asked if she smelled bad. Lemon answered yes and explained that he was talking about the old man's smell. At that moment, one little elf began to explain that a monster girl had entered their academy. The protagonist was surprised that they were talking about a transfer student and said that he had only just learned about it. Lemon asked him what he didn't know about monster girls. The protagonist apologized, and Lemon said that knowing him, it was expected, but nothing could be done. He wanted to tell him. So who are the monster girls? Monster girls are different mutated types of monsters. These are creatures with exceptional physical abilities, intelligence comparable to elves. In addition, they are distinguished by a beautiful appearance, reminiscent of the appearance of young human girls. These girls were originally monsters. It is not known for certain why they took human form or under what circumstances they did so. There are very few of them left, so little is known about them. The protagonist noted that Lemon knew a lot of things. The elf replied that it was common knowledge. He then thought that as a biology professor, Vashio should know this. The protagonist just laughed nervously. The protagonist replied that he specialized in low-ranking monsters. The elf decided to skip this part. Lemon added that the monster girls were guaranteed a place among the government or military leadership of the Demon King. They were part of the elite. The girl immediately entered the office. The elf said that teaching such girls means becoming an S-rank teacher, the envy of any educator. We are shown the familiar girl that Vashio encountered earlier. She immediately smiled and said hello to everyone. Her name is Claudia. She is a subspecies of kraken, and it was very nice to meet her. Everyone was just shocked by her because she was very beautiful and had big breasts. Even Lemon thought she was a beauty. The protagonist realized that yesterday's girl was a monster girl. The head said that they would hold a test next week to help her choose the right teacher. Claudia said that she had already decided who her teacher would be. She walked forward and stood next to the protagonist and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The girl took out her tentacles, which scared Lemon and Vashio. The protagonist silently looked at her, while she smiled right in his face. The protagonist was silent, and Claudia realized that he still didn't understand who she was. The protagonist replied that he didn't think he knew the monster girl. He immediately thought about the octopus he knew, and remembered the little octopus. Claudia turned to the sensei. She reminded him how the protagonist destroyed all the flasks with monsters, and took them all. She said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. The protagonist approached the octopus and extended his hand to her tentacle. The girl leaned against him and said that he saved her life that time. She hugged the protagonist's hand and said that she was now a monster girl, and smiled, and the protagonist was shocked. Afterwards, we are shown the next day. The protagonist ran through the city, shouting that he was already late. Then someone called Vashio. Claudia appeared, and the guys were surprised by her figure. The monster girl ran towards the protagonist and waved happily at him. Vashio also greeted her, and Claudia said that she came to pick up the teacher. The protagonist was surprised by this, and the girl grabbed him with her tentacle and asked him to hold on tighter. They immediately ran forward at high speed, and the teacher was simply in shock. Afterwards, they were in the office, and Vashio thanked Claudia. Thanks to her, he came to the academy early for the first time this month. The girl smiled and said that from now on she would come for him every morning. Vashio was a little embarrassed, and then realized that he had become the main teacher of the monster girl he had saved back then. Then we are shown the previous day. The girl smiled a lot, and Vashio said that she used to be so small, and now she has grown so much that he did not recognize her. Claudia smiled and answered that Vashio-sensei is cool as always. Lemon laughed a little nervously and asked what "as always" meant. But if they already knew each other, was that fair? He asked the director if he was okay with that arrangement. The director smiled and said there was no problem, although the others continued to say that it was wrong. Vashio was happy and replied that it meant everything was decided. Lemon, however, did not want to back down. He didn't understand how she chose a mere E-rank professor, and whether someone like him, an A-rank, would be more suitable. Claudia responded with a complete denial. She took the protagonist's hand and told him not to call him Professor E-rank. He was Vashio-sensei. Calling people by their rank was rude. Elf was simply shocked by these words, and the other teachers were whispering about something. The protagonist was a little upset because he thought that he had angered Lemon-sensei. Afterwards, the protagonist woke up from his memories, and Claudia asked the protagonist if something was wrong. Vashio replied that nothing was wrong. He decided to open the folder and take a look. He asked how the 3 days since she had started had gone. Claudia smiled and said that classes were fun. Vashio was happy about that, but she liked his biology lessons more. The protagonist was happy about it. Then he thought again and took some paper and said that they would put off the chatter for now. He handed her the paper and asked if she had thought about her future. Even though she's a freshman, she has a bright future ahead of her. She's an elite with a customized curriculum. He heard that in the past, all the monster girls were either in the government or the military leadership of the Demon King. Claudia clenched her fist and asked a little sadly if she really had to go to serve the Demon King. To be honest, she had already heard this from her classmates. This surprised the protagonist. She remembered how different girls asked her to recommend them to some ministry of the Demon King. Claudia was surprised and asked why her. The blonde answered that all the monster girls worked there. They doubted that the same thing would happen to Claudia, so it would be great if a worker there recommended them. The teachers told her the same thing. Claudia is a student with great potential and should receive the appropriate training. She wondered if she really had to live up to everyone's expectations. The protagonist thought for a moment, then smiled, and said that she shouldn't ask such a bad teacher for advice. It would be better if she consulted another teacher. Claudia looked at the protagonist and asked, even if Vashio was her main teacher. The protagonist just laughed and didn't know what to answer. Then he turned and said that she could take her time and think it over. She looked at Vashio very sadly. Then they show us a certain shop of various things. Vashio was in the cafeteria, and he took 2 sandwiches for himself. Claudia appeared and asked if that was enough for him, which scared the teacher. Claudia said that poor nutrition is harmful to the body. The protagonist replied that there was nothing to be done, because there was not enough money. She immediately took out a form and wanted to say that she had already filled it out, when Lemon appeared and grabbed the paper. They looked back in surprise. Lemon saw what she wrote and got very angry. Claudia wanted to become a teacher, and Lemon was very against it. He grabbed her and told her not to even think about it, because she was an exceptionally talented girl. He told her to just imagine someone like that working as a normal teacher. That was ridiculous. She should find a job in the Demon King's government that suits her. The girl began to panic and almost cry. Vashio intervened and said that he did not think it was wrong for a teacher to ignore a student's opinion. Lemon immediately threw away the protagonist's tray of food, and because of Washio's words, the elf was very angry, because he thought that this would be an incredible loss for the whole world. He thought that Vashio did not understand the importance of his job. He immediately grabbed him by the tie and added that, as teachers, they cannot ignore this. Immediately, all the students noticed that there was a quarrel between the teachers. Lemon thought that it was obvious that he was the only A-rank professor and should be her main teacher. He believed that a talented student needed a talented teacher. Vashio believed that Limon was right. Elf added that if everything was clear, he should begin the procedure for changing the teacher. If possible, he should submit an application to the principal today. At that moment, Claudia became indignant and touched the elf's back with her tentacles, which made him very scared. She turned him back and ordered him to leave Vashio-sensei alone. Claudia added that Vashio supported her dreams from the very beginning. He is a great teacher. When she hated herself, Vashio-sensei came to her and said, "Know yourself." All the people in the crowd were very surprised and did not understand what she meant and what she said. Lemon asked what she meant by the words, "not to expose your butt to an elf." In Japanese, these two phrases sound similar. Claudia added that these were the words that Vashio-sensei once said. They mean that you need to find your strengths and use them. The protagonist was surprised by her words. Vashio remembered Claudia's words when she was a child, that when she grew up she wanted to become a human. In the past, she said that if she became a human, she would marry Sensei. Vashio was surprised and asked if that was why she wanted to become a human. The protagonist,
I would be very happy if you subscribed to the channel, liked and wrote a comment, rating this manga on a scale from 1 to 10. Your opinion is very important to me. This will help me better understand what my audience is interested in, because you are really important to me.
Took the squid. And Claudia said that Sensei would hate her as long as she was like that. The protagonist replied that it was not true. He said that this was a great opportunity to tell them his favorite quote. It sounds like, know yourself. She wants her not to envy others, but to look for her positive sides. There must be something in which the octopus is better than others. Instead of looking for what they do not have, they should improve what they already have. He wants her to love herself. Claudia blushed at these words, and Vashio said that his own interpretation, some philosophers, gave it different meanings. But he likes this one. The protagonist added that if she wants to become a human, he will always support her. If she believes in herself, her dreams will come true. Vashio was surprised, because he didn't think that such a simple phrase said by him would help her to realize her dreams. And she would remember him and his words all this time, until, finally, she turns into a monster girl. He is happy. Vashio-sensei helped her see her good side. That's why he's the only one who can be her main teacher. Lemon was furious at these words. Lemon wanted to answer something, but he couldn't. Then the students asked if it wouldn't be better if old man Vashio was her teacher. Everyone thought he was as useless as Lemon-sensei said. Vashio was just old, he was a bit creepy but harmless. And what about the arrogant Lemon-sensei? He spoke as if he was always right about everything, and it irritated everyone. Not respecting the opinions of the students somehow was wrong. Lemon's hands began to shake, and Vashio was surprised. He immediately started crying, which surprised the protagonist and Claudia. The elf started running away, saying that he would remember this. And all the students were surprised that he ran away crying. Claudia suggested that the teacher go and buy something for lunch again. Vashio was still in shock. The protagonist took hold of her tentacle and thought that this octopus had grown a lot. Now she wants to become a teacher. He is very happy to be a teacher. She pulled him towards her, and the protagonist felt sorry that she had forgotten such a simple thing. Know thyself. I really never would have thought that 20 years later these words would come back to him. This made him very happy and smile. He thought that this was the real happiness of a teacher. They approached the buffet, and the protagonist asked if Claudia could lend him some money. He assured her that he would pay it back next week. The girl said that there was nothing she could do, and agreed. Later, we are shown a huge classroom, and that Claudia and Vashio were standing at the board. The protagonist was teaching the lesson, and said that even if she is cute, they should not let down their guard. She can use poison, knows how to handle strong magic, and she also has superhuman strength. She held a huge boulder and crushed it with ease with a smile on her face. After the lesson was over, Everyone was discussing what they had seen. The girls were shocked that, being so fragile and cute, she could break such a huge boulder, which was expected from a monster girl. Then another student noted that there had not been more people in biology classes lately, and someone pointed out to him that it was because Claudia was here. The protagonist, wiping the board of notes, apologized to her for distracting her with his terrible lectures. Claudia smiled and replied that, "Not at all. On the contrary, she was happy to help." She then leaned against him and added that she might be with Vashio-sensei, so it was okay. The protagonist smiled a little nervously and noted that she was using those jokes again. Claudia immediately noted what he had missed there. At the very top, she extended a tentacle to completely erase all the records. She said that she would help him, which greatly surprised the protagonist. The protagonist didn't know that she could stretch her tentacles that far, about 3 meters. Claudia said that, however, that was her limit. The protagonist thought it was useful and apologized. The girl only smiled at that. Claudia said that the tentacles are very useful. They can stretch and contract. They are very flexible. This made the protagonist a little embarrassed. Then she hugged him and said that they were strong enough to split the stone. The protagonist was embarrassed and did not know what to say. She immediately said that they were also suitable for massage and scratched her back. She said that after her separation from Vashio, she worked as a massage therapist for a while. She had a great reputation. Vashio fell on the floor from the high and said it was amazing. Then she put the eraser down and approached Vashio. She asked how about giving him another massage. For example, a little lower, she began to climb into the protagonist's pants with her tentacle, from which he became very embarrassed and only laughed nervously. She immediately said that she was joking and asked what was wrong and if he was worried. The protagonist was a little upset and denied it. Claudia said that she was 16 human years old, so she needed to practice her charm a little. Then she approached him again and asked him what he thought about it, if it was sexual. The protagonist became very embarrassed again. The protagonist immediately got out of the lesson and said that the next lesson would start soon. The girl was a little upset because she wanted to spend more time with him. She stood up and said that they would see each other later and she would go have lunch. Claudia quickly left the class and the protagonist fell under the table. His heart was beating hard because of what had just happened. Claudia walked out of the classroom and she thought it was very difficult to be a horny. She immediately realized that she was very late and ran. At the same time, a carriage drove up to the academy and a girl got out of it. She had some paws sticking out from under her skirt, and this girl was wondering if Vashio-sensei still remembered her. Afterwards, we are shown how the protagonist was sleeping, and there were many tentacles around him. It was the first time in his life that he experienced something like this. The tentacles were warm, slimy, and had a slightly fishy smell. Frankly, it was disgusting. He has nightmares about what happened. Afterwards, the protagonist went outside and was very happy that there was no overtime today, and it was wonderful. Even in the previous world, it was a real miracle. His back hurt, and he couldn't move any more than he could now. Then the girl he already knew called Vashio and hugged him from behind. The protagonist was scared and jumped back and fell. He thought it was too close and asked who she was. The girl greeted him and said that they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Vashio asked again who she was. She smiled, because she thought that he would not recognize her, because she had changed a lot since then. She lifted her skirt a little and bowed to the teacher. The protagonist also noticed the legs of this beautiful girl. Paws appeared from under the dress, and she said that she was the spider he had saved back then. Now she was a monster girl. The protagonist immediately remembered this spider and asked if she was a little spider. Afterwards, they went into the restaurant, and the spider was very happy that it was her first time visiting such a small restaurant. It was the first time she saw such a worn-out chandelier. The waiter immediately prepared a table for them and asked the girl to sit down. The girl sat down and asked that this dirty barrel was her seat. The waiter got a little angry and told Vashio that although his girlfriend was beautiful, she was very rude. The protagonist replied that he was sorry, but Vashio brought a girl to this establishment for the first time, so the owner will be lenient and cook something special. The protagonist replied that he would owe. Afterwards, the spider began to eat. She lived it and said that it was the first time she tried such dry and at the same time delicious meat. All the visitors thought that this girl was just lovely. The protagonist asked the spider to stop insulting the restaurant. The girl replied that she was not insulting, she was just expressing her opinion. Moreover, she is no longer a little spider, she is now Arya. The men behind heard this and thought that this name was very beautiful and elegant. This name suits her perfectly. The protagonist said that who would have thought that the shy spider girl who always hid in the corner of the classroom would turn into a monster girl. The protagonist supported this spider, which made her cry. Arya said that it was a hard time for her, but thanks to the words of Sensei. But before she could finish speaking, the protagonist thought about her words and did not understand what she was talking about. Arya was pleased to know that he was still teaching. She wondered what kind of magic he taught his students. The protagonist replied that he was now a biology teacher. The girl was surprised and asked why, if he was. But before she could finish speaking, he said that it was nothing to worry about. With a mug of beer in his hands, he said that everything was changing. The girl looked at the protagonist attentively. She immediately agreed, and Vashio asked her if she remembered the little octopus. Arya remembered her and considered her naive. The protagonist agreed and answered that she was now Claudia. He told her that she too was able to turn into a monster girl and that she also became his student. He is so happy that she adores him, but their relationship is a bit strange. They always eat together and she is always clinging to him. It must be the nature of octopuses, or maybe it is just childish affection. As he told this story, Arya's face kept changing. She got very angry and asked the owner to bring the most expensive dishes on the menu and more beer. Everyone was surprised by this, and the men behind just wished Vashio to hold on. Afterwards, they finished their lunch and left the building. Arya said it was very tasty and asked if he wanted her to pay the bill. The protagonist laughed and asked not to worry, he would only be eating bread for a week. Vashio realized that it was late, and so he offered to walk her home. Arya thanked him and said that there was no need to worry because her carriage had already arrived. The protagonist was shocked and realized that she was rich. She immediately turned to him and hugged Vashio, saying that she was glad to see him today. She only hopes that they will see each other again soon. Arya finally fulfilled her dream. She hugged Sensei with her human arms. She immediately remembered how the protagonist constantly talked about Claudia, how she had grown up, how she made him happy, etc. Her face changed a little. She sat down in the carriage and thought about what Vashio was saying about the octopus in front of her. She thought that he did not understand a woman's heart. Immediately, she opened her eyes and saw a gift box. She remembered that she forgot to give it to him and did not know that if she returned now, she would catch up with him. Meanwhile, Claudia called Vashio and said that if he had already finished the lesson, she wanted to go back together. Claudia was immediately told that if she was looking for Vashio sensei, he had already left. They saw him leaving with a beautiful, black-haired girl. Claudia began to get angry at these words. It all started with Arya getting out of her carriage and walking down the street. She didn't understand where Vashio sensei was and immediately assumed that he had already gone home. She looked at the gift for Vashio and thought about giving it to him tomorrow at the academy. Someone appeared and shouted that they had to run to the church quickly because there was a fire there. Arya began to take off her shoes, and spider legs appeared from under her dress. She saw a huge building that was in flames. People were shouting that they needed to bring water quickly and they didn't understand where the doctor was, because the children had burns and needed to be cooled. The little children were crying and scared when they saw the church burning. One of the nuns wanted to run inside because there was another child inside, but the man tried to calm her down and held her back. The nun immediately ran up to Arya, and the girl asked if the child was still there. The woman explained that the children were fooling around and knocked over the candles, and she just went out to buy bread for tomorrow's lunch and asked to save the child. Seeing the tear-stained face of the nun, she took her hand and smiling asked her to give it to her. She immediately ran inside the building when they shouted after her that it was dangerous there and she should stop. Arya, using her paws, was able to quickly run into the building. She covered her mouth and began to look around the church. She thought that she was a little out of touch with water magic, but she had no choice. The child's life would be in danger if she didn't find him soon. Arya opened the door to the children's room where there were many beds and said that she came to help. She started screaming and asking the child to answer because she couldn't find him. Then she heard a quiet cough behind her. She turned around and started walking straight to the strange shelf. On the floor, she saw a boy with a wardrobe lying on him, and he was already unconscious. She quickly broke the cabinet and lifted the boy up, assuring him that everything would be fine now. Ahead of her, she saw a huge fire stick blocking her path. Arya thought about destroying it with her lightning magic. Then she looked back straight at the child and realized that at that distance, the child could be seriously hurt. Someone immediately appeared and used a mysterious power. A huge demon hand appeared, which seemed to be unsealed. It turns out it was the protagonist who summoned a demon with his magic and used a water wall. Arya had already resigned herself to the fact that she was going to die when suddenly the fire disappeared and fish began to fly in the air. The girl thought that she had not seen her for 20 years, but she was still fascinated by Vashio sensei's magic. Not even a teacher but the highest-ranking wizard in the kingdom. The Golden Eagle, that's what the protagonist was called. Vashio said that it was in the past now. Now he was an ordinary biology teacher, and an old man with a sore shoulder. His shoulders had been overstrained in recent days. Seeing this picture, Arya was a little surprised. The whole church was filled with water, and there were fish swimming everywhere. People were simply shocked to see that the church was literally flooded. A huge water dome appeared around the building. The guys started asking each other who used magic, but everyone was just simple workers, not magicians. The little girl saw the fish and decided to run to the building. People started shouting at her not to go there, but the little girl didn't care and wanted to touch the fish. Arya came out of the building with the boy on her back. Everyone was shocked that a girl came out of the church and did not know if everything was okay with her. At the last moment, they also noticed that she was carrying a child and again did not understand where the doctor was now. Arya said that she had given the boy first aid with magic, but just in case they should take him to a doctor. The nun was very happy about this and wished for God to protect her. The man smiled and said that he expected this from a monster girl. The water magic that enveloped the church was simply incredible. Everyone was shocked when they realized that Arya was a monster girl, because she looked like a fragile girl. But she was strong and so beautiful. Arya tried to say that it was not she who created the water magic. She immediately noticed that Vashio, having done his job, did not wait for praise and simply went home. People were happy about the monster girl and thought they were cool. Arya was a little surprised, and she felt sorry that all the praise went to her. Vashio laughed as he left and said that she tried hard. Afterwards, the water magic began to disappear, and the church became the same. The girl saw the remaining water splash and was surprised. She stood up and asked Arya if the fish were magical too. Arya snapped her fingers and agreed. Then she looked at her carefully and saw her flower wreath. The girl understood and told that when the church burned down, she was sad, but a shabby old man came and said that now everything will be fine, and gave her a wreath. This made her smile. She smiled widely and added that magic makes everyone smile and that she loves magic. Arya began to remember the word Vashio. He called her then Little Spider. He also made her a wreath and put it on Arya. The spider was embarrassed and thanked Vashio. He thought that she had a weak reaction. Arya didn't understand why the teacher always gave her flowers. She then asked why Vashio was teaching them magic. The protagonist replied that he hoped they would need it someday. The spider replied that she had not asked for it. The protagonist thought about it and agreed, but said that there was one quote he liked: "To live is to give." He asked if it wasn't nice to give something to others. Flowers, knowledge, a smile. It didn't matter what it was. The main thing was that both he and those around him felt good. He put his hand on her face and added that over time, this became the meaning of his life. That's why he became a teacher. The spider jumped and hugged Vashio, saying that she also wanted to do something good for others. Vashio suggested going and giving a flower crown to the octopus. Arya remembered this moment with a smile on her face. Then she saw Vashio leaving and added that a teacher always gives something. The next day came, and Arya came to school. The students were discussing the news. Someone found out that there was a fire in a church shelter in the central district the previous evening. Another student said that he knew about it because it was near his parents' house. The students thought that the monster girl put out the fire with her magic. They were surprised and thought that it was Claudia. Another student explained that it was a girl named Arya. She had just entered the school today. Afterwards, Arya approached Claudia, and she noted that there were already rumors about the spider. Arya replied that it wasn't her. Claudia knew this and assumed that Vashio-sensei did it. She knows that Arya has always been bad at water magic, which made Arya pout a little. Claudia asked if he was still so muscular. Arya answered yes. The octopus also wanted to see Vashio-sensei's magic. Arya added that his horns and muscles had become even bigger. Claudia was surprised and couldn't wait to see him. The protagonist himself appeared and asked if she remembered the past. Claudia answered that, something like that. At that moment, Vashio turned his attention to Arya. She thanked him again, because thanks to Vashio, she turned into a monster girl. She handed him a gift and added that it was a token of gratitude and in honor of their reunion. A small gift. The protagonist was surprised and asked if he could take it. Arya smiled and said yes, because to live is to give, something like that. Then Vashio asked if he could open it, and she gave him the go-ahead. Claudia watched the whole situation with a strange expression on her face. Opening the box, the protagonist's face began to glow. Arya gave him a new tie with a web and helped him put it on. Claudia looked at it with a crazy expression on her face. The protagonist was embarrassed, and Arya immediately hugged Vashio, saying that she thought he would look great. Claudia was shaking looking at the two of them. Claudia immediately intervened and said that it was simply because Sensei was a great model and that the octopus pattern would suit him better. Arya thought that was not the case and asked Vashio if the one with the web was prettier. The protagonist asked them to move away from him because everyone was looking at them. Indeed, the girls were very noisy and everyone paid attention to them and were surprised that the students were hugging the teacher. Claudia put an octopus tie on him and said that the octopus pattern suited Vashio better. Arya thought that the web pattern was better. Claudia objected again and said that the octopus was cuter and looked better on Vashio. Vashio, in turn, stood silently and listened to the girls' argument. Afterwards, Arya went into the protagonist's office and gave him the paper for admission. Vashio realized that Arya wanted to join the magical guard. She has great magical power, surpassing other students. He smiled and added that he would support her in any way he could and wanted to try together. Arya couldn't hold back her emotions and hugged the protagonist, to which he told her not to rush into hugging. Later, he read some paper and thought that it was good that Claudia and Arya were looking to the future. He would also try for them. Right behind Vashio, the teachers started arguing about who would win this spring. The girl spoke for herself, but the elf said that he had the best first years in the academy and they would not lose. At that moment, they both drooped and hung their heads. They remembered about the elf Lemon and thought that he would probably win all the tournaments again this year. They have been undefeated for 5 years in a row. Vashio thought that the teachers were having fun, but that was his business. At the same time, the girls were sitting by the fountain, and Claudia laughed that Arya would become a guard. She laughed loudly and said that Arya was the one who bit. Arya replied that it was because one octopus threw caterpillars, and even though she was a spider, she didn't eat bugs. Arya wondered what she wanted to become. Claudia answered that she wanted to become a teacher, like Vashio Sensei, to teach both monsters and humans together. Arya smiled when she heard this answer. She thought it was a wonderful dream, and Claudia smiled too. At the same time, different students were walking in this room and thought that it smelled very nice and that some kind of flower spirit lived here. Claudia raised her hand and said that they both needed to work hard for the future. Someone immediately appeared and called the first-year girls. The guy confidently asked if she wanted to join his faction. There was also a modest little elf and a cheerful girl standing next to him. Arya and Claudia were surprised to see the guy. He apologized for not introducing himself and said that he was Frederick, a second year and a Lemonian. The girl was a third year and from Aruba Sensei's research faction. The elf was also a third year, from Julius's faction. The girls were confused when they heard them, and Claudia thought that Frederick was a narcissist. Arya asked what a faction was. Frederick explained that it was a student interest group. In each faction, they studied one of the 3 types of magic. They improved and learned from each other. Arya understood. Claudia, hearing about the magic circle, thought about it and did not know what to do. The girl wanted to tell them to come because it would be interesting, but before she could finish speaking, Frederick quickly raised his hand, which accidentally hit the girl on the forehead and said that they had a faction of Lemonians of chance. He approached the girls and said that chants are true magic, multiplying the power of magic many times over, and he believes that they, as elite monster girls, should be able to sing. He took them by the tentacle and pawed and told them to join him, and they would create the strongest faction in the school. But before he could finish speaking, Claudia snatched her tentacle from his hands and sternly replied that she didn't want it. Frederick was surprised, and Arya said that just the fact that he said must is a bit unpleasant when people are forced. The other girl thought that then they could go to her, but Arya also refused her. She is not interested in such gatherings in principle. Claudia admitted that, frankly speaking, she is not that good at magic. She is more suited to training physical skills. Frederick began to stand up, saying that all this is good, and suggested settling the matter with a duel. The winner is the one who first wounds the enemy with magic. Claudia turned around and said that she didn't feel like it. Frederick didn't care and started using magic. He turned to the Erd tree and asked it to defeat the enemy standing in front of him and bring victory in the night. He created a huge wave that appeared above the girls' heads. Claudia easily cut through the wave with her tentacles and looked sternly at the fool. He started clapping his hands, saying that it was excellent. As expected of a monster girl, she destroyed the wave with one swing. Now he wanted to test Arya's magic, but she decided to refuse. Frederick was acting like a real idiot, and so he decided to motivate her a little. He started summoning a huge wolf. Afterwards, we are shown Professor Lemon's lesson. Before starting, he wanted to repeat the principle of magic. When activating a spell, a symbol of the magician's magical power appears from the shadows. This happens spontaneously when using magic of a certain rank, regardless of the will of the caster. This is called the image of magical power. The girls were surprised when they saw this creature and did not know whether it was a wolf or a werewolf. Frederick decided to repeat the teacher's words that when a spell is activated, a symbol of the caster's magic appears from the shadows. This happens spontaneously when using magic of a certain rank, regardless of the caster's will. This phenomenon is called the image of magical power. This is a magical image. A werewolf. The wolf came up to the guy and seemed to hug him. Lemon continued to say that magical images are the embodiment of magic and reflect the spirit of the magician. They can be beasts, phantoms, monsters, and many other forms. But it is not the form that is important, but the ability to recreate it. The size is equal to the total amount of magical powers. Someone may have an E-rank mouse, and someone else an A-rank cat. In other words, you can measure the power of a magician by looking at the size of his magical image. All the students watched Frederick with surprise in their eyes. They realized that Frederick's magical image had grown even larger, and that his magic had become even stronger. For a second year, this was an incredible result. Arya heard all of this and watched carefully. She realized that judging by his magical image, he was a C, even B-rank mage. Frederick extended his hand and said that she was in too much of a hurry and asked to take another closer look. He began to chant a spell to the holy spirit of ice, Borealis, a spirit trapped in a distant realm of cold. He asked that the spirit respond to his voice with blades of absolute zero, risen from the abyss. He must rend the flesh of his enemies. He summoned a huge ice knife. Claudia was very surprised by this and noted that it was very large. A huge ice boulder fell on the girls, and Claudia easily destroyed it with one of her tentacles. Frederick looked at Claudia and asked if she was surprised that he was so huge. He had already told them that their faction, the Lemonians, practiced chanting. Chanting doubled the power of magic. That made him almost an A-rank mage. Rumor had it that their faction leader, Lemon Sensei, had 3 times the power of normal magic. He thought it was only a matter of time before he was awarded the highest gold title in the kingdom. He extended his hand again and said that now that he knew about the Lemonian chant, he thought he had their interest. The boy asked if they would join his faction. Arya and Claudia listened attentively. The crowd of students shouted that Frederick was great, and the monster girl who broke the spell was even better. It's true that no one can be a better monster girl, but Frederick is still impressive. But in reality, Arya and Claudia were not impressed by him. Of course, he is a good magician, but he cannot be compared to Vashio sensei. Claudia raised her hands and timidly decided to refuse, but assured that she would talk to Vashio sensei about it. Arya agreed and nodded. Friederike realized that she was talking about that sad vulture. He remembered that Vashio was her main teacher, that worthless teacher. The girls looked at the guy sternly at these words. He immediately added that she had said in the cafeteria that she owed him something, but he had made her say it and assumed that he was right. Lemon Sensei said that Vashio is a worthless person who is forever stuck at E-rank. He thinks that he threatened the monster girls by demanding that they appoint him as the main teacher to repay them for their development. He thinks that Vashio is just a nasty old man of E-rank. Immediately, someone released a huge force that killed the werewolf, and the tower behind him also collapsed. A moment later, a large explosion thundered behind Frederick. He was just shocked and scared, and Claudia started saying that since they were called Lemonians, they would think the same. Their ridicule of Vashio sensei was hateful to Claudia. She started screaming because of it. She took out all her tentacles, and all the students were shocked by Claudia and did not know what magic she had just used. They were scared. They thought that Claudia was definitely a monster. Arya looked at the tentacles and told Claudia that she had such vulgar tentacles. The girl replied that these were her real tentacles. Arya realized that she could no longer hold back her anger. Then she turned to Frederick, which scared him even more. Arya took out her spider legs and said that he was not a vulture, not an E-rank, but a Vashio senai. She demanded an apology for mocking the teacher. Frederick realized that these were monster girls. Her tentacles are even more frightening than usual. Even though she is a beautiful girl, the tentacles growing out of her are too scary. The spider legs are also very creepy. After all, They are both monsters. Looking at their creepy aura and powerful tentacles, he realized that they were monster girls. Arya said that she wanted an apology for mocking the teacher. Then she looked at him again and asked if he hurt her. Arya began to change and become more spider-like and ordered him to apologize quickly. Frederick was in a panic and couldn't say anything. Vashio appeared immediately, realizing that there was a library in the blown-up tower, and thought that was bad. Then Vashio and Limon flew into the dining room and asked what the noise was and if everyone was okay, because the tower had been blown off. Limon was surprised by this and thought that this couldn't be happening. Then he looked and realized that this was indeed the case. The elf noted that not many students were capable of destroying the school, and asked the monster girls which of them did it. Vashio noted that he did not think it was right to immediately claim that it was them. Claudia screamed that it wasn't so, and that he started it, and pointed her finger at Frederick, and he immediately grabbed her hand, which surprised her. Frederick confessed that he loved Claudia, which greatly surprised everyone present. He had never seen such a powerful explosion magic, as expected from the most beautiful monster girl. Moreover, her magic catalyst is the Exaltation Ring. This ring reduces magic power in exchange for instant activation, and even so, the explosion was so powerful. Words cannot describe how wonderful it is. He had never been so interested in another person in his life. He thought it was love and asked her out on a date. Claudia looked at it with disgust and was scared. Vashio apologized for interrupting their love squabble, but everyone who used magic outside of class had to write an explanatory note. Claudia snatched her hand and said that this was not a lover's squabble. She started to leave, and Friedrich walked after her. Lemon angrily noted that Claudia destroyed the tower because of a quarrel, and realized that he had raised them well. Lemon laughed nervously and noted that they were usually both calm girls. He didn't even know what came over them. He immediately apologized and added that he needed to be strict. Lemon put his hand on Vashio's shoulder and added that if this was too much for him to bear, he could always take it over. It would be better for them. Claudia took Vashio by the hand and pulled him along. Vashio realized that vindictiveness was one of Lemon Sensei's strong points. Later, they came to the dean's office. Friedrich said that he had already finished writing, and Claudia was still furious. Vashio realized that Frederick attacked first, then Claudia, and asked if everything was right. The guy said that he deeply regretted his rash actions. Claudia immediately became indignant and asked where the respectful address to the teacher was. Vashio noted that Frederick was the head of the Limon faction, so he should not break the school rules. Frederick replied that Limon Sesni usually covers for him, but promised that he would try. The girls thought that he was a bastard. He immediately said that he was done with Vashio. He turned to Claudia and touched her face. He promised that one day he would break Vashio's brainwashing and save her, and then they would officially announce their relationship. Claudia slapped his hand away and told him not to do that. Then he turned to Arya. Friedrich was embarrassed and said that he didn't like insects, so he couldn't love her, a spider. These words made the girls even angrier, and Friedrich added that he would tolerate her and accept her into his faction. Arya replied that she felt sick at the thought of it, so she had to politely decline. Afterwards, Frederick left and said goodbye. Vashio said that it was probably good that such a young, talented person was in love with them. Then he saw their stern faces, and Claudia asked him to stop, and Arya asked if he thought they had problems with their eyesight. Vashio tensed up a bit and apologized. The protagonist admitted that he thought they would be a good couple. A handsome guy her age would be better than an old man like him. Vashio felt a little sad and looked down when Claudia stood in front of him and the protagonist saw her balls. The girl said that this is exactly what she doesn't like about him. She pouted a little and said that she felt hurt, so they should go on a date after class, and asked if there were any objections. The protagonist was a little embarrassed and answered that this month was such a busy schedule. Arya thought about it and remembered that Frederick left without apologizing, which meant they had unfinished business. After a while, Vashio realized that they had finally written an explanatory note. He asked them not to use magic outside of class anymore. The girls unanimously said that they wouldn't do it again. They stood up, and leaving, Claudia said that she would go to her afternoon class. She immediately added that he shouldn't forget that they had a date after school. Claudia blushed a little, and the protagonist agreed. After the lessons were over and all the students left the academy, Claudia changed into regular clothes and asked the other girls what they thought and whether it suited her. They all answered that the dress looked incredibly cute on her. The protagonist saw Claudia, or rather her balls, and was very embarrassed. He noted that she was very cute. Arya immediately appeared, who also changed her clothes, and asked what about her How was she to him? The girls replied that she was cute. The protagonist smiled and said that they were both very cute. They clenched their fists and turned to the teacher. Claudia took out another suit and asked him what color he thought suited her better. Which one looked better? The protagonist smiled and said that he thought either option would be fine. They both suited her. Claudia was a little angry about this, and Arya was embarrassed. Claudia decided to buy 2 dresses at once. The saleswoman replied that she would owe 93,000 yen. The protagonist was surprised, and Arya said that he did not understand a woman's heart at all. The protagonist came up to pay and asked if it was possible to pay in installments, but the saleswoman said no. The girls immediately looked at each other and Claudia asked why she went with them. Arya answered that she just wanted to go on a date with Vashio-sensei too. Moreover, she didn't want them alone. Claudia understood her. They immediately heard the girls whispering that their main teacher of monster girls was Vashio. The first one asked if he was an E-rank teacher. The other one agreed that he was just an E rank. The first one suggested that the students were constantly throwing mud at him, and she agreed. At that moment, Claudia took Vashio by the hand and suggested going out for a snack because they really wanted pancakes. Afterwards, Arya took the food and offered it to Vashio. The protagonist said that he didn't need it, and Arya asked him not to say that. An old man immediately appeared, hugged Vashio, and asked what Vashio was doing. He realized that Vashio was with the students and noted that they were very beautiful girls. He had already seen the one with long black hair at the bar. The protagonist realized that the old man had already drunk, to which the grandfather replied that he was not drunk yet. The old man said that he had such cute students. He should get a promotion. Rank E was too low. Vashio just laughed at this. The old man asked if he was offended that he was so different from his colleague, Lemon Sensei, with whom he had started working at the same time. The girls were eating and following their conversation attentively. They were surprised that Vashio and Elf had entered the academy at the same time. The protagonist was very modest and replied that he was more suited to the E rank. It did not have so many duties and responsibilities. The old man patted him on the shoulder and said that this is why young people in their day were so worthless. Vashio replied that he was almost 50. The old man added that when he was young, he only strived forward. Claudia realized that everyone was underestimating Vashio-sensei. Arya noted that Frederick and Lemon Sensei were very categorical, but so were the townspeople. She immediately told Arya that she had an idea, but Arya had one too. The protagonist saw that they had decided to go somewhere and asked them. Claudia answered that they would step away for a minute. Arya said that it was just a normal girl talk. The old man continued to say that this is why all men should strive for success, to earn money and provide for their families. The girls were discussing something. They immediately apologized because they had urgent matters and went home. Arya added that they would have another date. The protagonist was a little surprised, but understood them. Vashio, watching the girls leave, said that they were free to do whatever they wanted. The old man suggested that the protagonist go have a drink and listen to his instructions at the same time. The very next day, the protagonist was walking through the academy and eating a sandwich. He thought it was unusual that neither Arya nor Claudia were there. Arya herself appeared. She came up behind Vashio and greeted him. The girl put on her glasses and looked beautiful. The teacher noted that he had just remembered her. Arya handed over a paper and asked the sensei to sign here. The man took the document and did not understand what it was. Arya adjusted her glasses and proudly answered that it was an application for the creation of the Vashio faction. She wanted to show everyone how cool a teacher he was. The protagonist was a little scared because he did not understand why they needed the Vashio faction at all. Afterwards, the protagonist sat down at the table and simply fell on it. He thought that this was another misfortune on his head. Arya stood next to him, full of pride. The protagonist stood up and said that it was impossible for E-rank Arya to lead the faction. Arya adjusted her glasses and replied that it was possible. Arya decided to tell the conditions for creating a faction. The method of using magic must be different from other factions. Using Rings of Ascension, there must be at least 3 members. Claudia will drag someone along. The faction leader's teacher must be D rank or higher, and Vashio has already been promoted to D rank. Arya said that all the conditions were met, which surprised Vashio greatly. The protagonist, looking at the document, did not understand why he was suddenly promoted to rank D. In 20 years, he had never been offered a promotion. Arya replied that she simply said that she would leave the academy if she failed to create Vashio's faction. Vashio realized that she was threatening the director. The spider approached him and added that only his signature remained. She asked him to hurry up and sign it. Vashio did not know what to do and agreed. He asked if it was necessary to create a new faction at all. Arya was surprised by his question. Vashio added that the existing factions were more than capable of teaching magic, and she would learn much more if she interacted with more students. She didn't have to worry about him. It would be better for her to interact with other students. He offered her to join the Lemon faction. Frederick would gladly accept them. Arya started to approach him, and Vashio added that they despised Lemon Sensei too much. Although he is a bit proud, he is truly talented and a great teacher. Arya leaned towards the protagonist and started crying. The protagonist was surprised by this and asked her to stop. Arya assured that Vashio Sensei was a much better teacher, but instead of challenging the unfair E rank, he simply remained silent. This upsets her greatly. The protagonist was very surprised by this. Vashio decided to apologize, and Arya screamed that if he wanted to apologize, he should just sign this. Vashio looked at her pitifully. He remembered how in the past he found a spider in the ruins. The protagonist decided to say something when Claudia appeared, interrupting him and shouting his name. He ran to the teacher and put the paper down, and Vashio noticed her balls. Claudia said that she found it on his desk and thought it was something important. Vashio realized that it was a letter from that cohabitant's grandmother. He took out the letter and realized that his grandmother was getting old, and that's why she asked him to move out, because he was thinking of handing over the management of this house to his son, and he asked to be evicted. The protagonist was very surprised that tomorrow he would be left without a roof over his head at 50 years old. He realized that he was now a homeless old man. Claudia also read everything carefully and said that since he would become a faction curator, he would live in a dorm, so it was not a problem. The protagonist was a little angry and did not understand what she was talking about. Claudia realized that he did not know. Vashio assumed that they were providing a room in a dorm, so he had no other options. Only how to become a faction curator or become a homeless person. The protagonist was a little sad about this, and then Arya turned to him. She bowed and said that she didn't care if he was doing it for the dorm or not. They wanted to hang out with Vashio Sensei. The protagonist looked at Arya, who was literally begging him, and smiled. He said that he gave in and agreed. Arya thanked him profusely, and Claudia was surprised that she had not yet taken the signature. Vashio immediately signed the document. The protagonist thought about how the Vashio faction would be made up mostly of students. The faction curator is just a formality, a sort of advisor who drops in from time to time. It seems like he has no role, but he gets a raise and free dorms. Arya was glad that he finally signed the document, and Claudia told her to wait. She saw that he wrote Vashio and not Vashio. Arya thought that he did it on purpose and added that it was very clever. We are shown an old, slightly ruined tower. Inside there was some kind of mechanical egg, in which there was a mysterious girl, and the inscription said that 5% of the magic power remained. Afterwards, the whole group was in the director's office. He realized that they wanted to create a new faction. The elf carefully studied the document and even answered that they had an exaltation ring. But then he rejected the document, and Claudia, surprised, asked why. She grabbed him and asked why, since they had fulfilled all the conditions. The elf was a little scared and asked him to calm down. The director explained that the ring was originally infused with magic, which surprised the girls. Claudia was a little angry at Vashio and said that he should have been told earlier. The director asked, first of all, what a faction is. He said that it is the study of magic from different points of view, using different approaches and methods. The so-called magic study circles, factions. Julius's faction uses false singing rings. Lemonian's, chants. Aruba's faction studies ritual magic using incense. They all have their own research topics. After the conversation, the group left the director's office. Claudia thought that they needed to find another way. Arya replied that she didn't know what else to think of. The protagonist thought that he needed to urgently create a faction to get a dormitory. Otherwise, he would become a homeless old man. He thought that he would have to kneel before the housekeeper. Frederick immediately appeared and said that he was glad to see his dear Claudia again today. Everyone was very surprised by his words. He approached Claudia and said that she was as beautiful as ever and that he loved her. Claudia tried to push him away and thanked him. Frederick asked if she felt awkward looking in his direction. Claudia asked him to stop calling her his sweetheart. Vashio noted that they were getting along very well. Claudia got angry and said that she was serious and Vashio should listen. He should not say that again because it was offensive. Vashio got scared on her behalf and apologized. The protagonist became despondent and lowered his head, and Arya decided to support him. Claudia realized that he was despondent, and immediately Frederick said that Lemon-sensei asked to tell them. The other day, Claudia destroyed the tower that housed the Lemonians' magical furnace. It was also destroyed, which was very unfortunate. They had to go to the Phantom Tower and get a new furnace. The shabby and abandoned tower, which can be accessed from the 3rd floor of the main building, is also known as the Phantom Tower. Rumor has it that there are different spirits and ghosts living there. Claudia got scared when she heard this. Frederick saw this and said that he was sure that everything would be fine because Vashio-sensei would be with her. But the protagonist himself was also scared and shaking. Arya clapped her hands and said with a smile on her face that they were going on their way. Claudia was a little surprised, and Arya added that it was Claudia who destroyed the oven in the first place, and there would be 3 of them. They didn't want to go into that ruined building, and Claudia was still afraid. When entering the task, Vashio asked if she could let him go, to which Claudia replied with a denial, because she was scared. Vashio thought about the fact that he also doesn't like ghosts. He thought about how he needed to quickly find the magic oven and get out of here. They began to carefully go inside. Frederick came to Lemon-sensei and said that he sent the sad vulture and the monster girls there as he ordered. Elf said he did a great job. Frederick hoped his sweetheart would join the Lemon faction. Elf said that was the plan. Vashio would be scared shitless of the ghost. Then he would show up and heroically save him, and they would realize how good he was. The perfect strategy to control the brains of these two. Frederick began clapping and said that he expected this from Lemon-sensei. The two immediately exchanged glances. They folded their hands into a seal. Lemon and Frederick began listing the Lemonian creeds. The first was A-rank intellect. The second was A-rank financial power. Third, A-rank pride. They laughed, and Lemon said he couldn't wait for the monster girls to join them. Frederick hoped his sweet Claudia would learn the Lemonian creed. The elf thought that he would now be responsible for training the monster girls and return to the correct world line. At the same time, Vashio, Claudia, and Arya carefully walked through the old house. Later, we are shown this ruined tower again. It is still unclear how it is still standing. Claudia was sitting on Vashio and saying his name while moaning sweetly. The protagonist was surprised and asked Claudia to calm down. He was already at the limit before his banana got hard. Her softballs fell on the guy's face, and he noted that they were very soft. The protagonist whispered that the balls were hitting his face. Claudia said that she didn't mind if he touched them, of course, if he wanted to. The protagonist replied that he was against it. He didn't understand how it had come to this, and we are shown the moment before it. Claudia realized that this is what a ghostly tower is like. It is dark and creepy here, even during the day. She wanted to quickly find a magic oven for Lemon-sensei and quickly leave here. The protagonist agreed with this. They all walked forward, and Claudia said that she was still scared and wanted to wait outside. Vashio was surprised that even monsters were scared of ghosts. Claudia shouted that she personally was scared. She was shaking a little, and when they walked forward, the door behind them suddenly closed loudly, which scared Vashio and Claudia. But Arya did not even flinch. Claudia realized that the door closed by itself, and immediately a black silhouette with eyes appeared in front of them. They all turned back and saw a creepy ghost in front of them, who roared loudly, which scared all 3 of them. Vashio and Claudia started running back screaming. Arya realized something and asked them to wait, when Claudia pressed a button with her foot and a hatch opened under them, which surprised them greatly. They started falling down with a scream, and the protagonist almost touched the floor with his face. Arya saved them by wrapping them in web and asked them to calm down and not to twitch there, because she would lift them up now. At that moment, the hatch closed and the web broke. Claudia and Vashio fell to the floor and hit their heads. It was quite dark there, and the protagonist did not think that there would be traps in the ghostly tower. Arya hoped that Arya would be okay. He shouted for Claudia to untangle the web. At that moment, she screamed and got scared. The protagonist realized that he accidentally touched her balls. The girl blushed a little and said that she seemed to be starting to feel strange. She smiled brightly and admitted that her monster girl instincts were getting out of control. The protagonist was very scared when he realized what she was talking about. He asked her to calm down and fight her instincts. Instincts are just her feelings and actions that come before her thoughts. The girl blushed even more and asked what he was talking about. The girl pressed herself even closer to him, and Vashio asked her to stop. He said that this was not right, but Claudia thought the opposite. She answered that everything was fine, because they would get married someday anyway. The protagonist, hearing about getting married, became even more frightened and began to beg Claudia to calm down. The girl pushed her lips forward and started to approach the protagonist, and he was still asking her to stop. As soon as she almost touched his lips, Vashio accidentally hit the wall with his elbow, and a crack immediately appeared on it. The wall behind Vashio broke, and they flew down. A moment later they fell, and the girl fell on the protagonist. The girl continued to look at the protagonist with a loving gaze. Vashio stood up and asked Claudia, who was still sitting on the guy, if she was okay, and the girl nodded. Then they both looked to the side and saw some huge capsule in which there was some girl. It was a robot girl. The protagonist looked at her and was surprised. The capsule reported that there was 0% of magical energy left. The automaton is inactive. To protect information, self-destruction will occur in 60 seconds. Hearing this, Vashio and Claudia were very scared. The computer started counting down, and the girl, realizing that self-destruction was about to happen, asked Vashio what they should do. The protagonist understood that they needed to get away from here. He started pressing some buttons, but nothing happened. The computer continued counting down, and Vashio realized that they were trapped. The protagonist tried to turn the door handle, but it wouldn't open, and the two were trapped. Vashio understood that he needed to calm down, because in such situations you need to keep a cool head and go towards your goal. That's how they say it. Claudia understood everything, but she knew that now was not the time for quotations. The numbers continued to leak out with each passing second. Claudia looked at the girl and said that it had to stop. The protagonist agreed with her. He assumed that there must be instructions or something like that. Vashio looked at the table and saw a book. He was very surprised, because it was not an ordinary book, but a grimoire. It contained various information about this capsule and many other things. The protagonist took the book, and Claudia asked what a grimoire was. The protagonist was surprised that she didn't know, but he knew now was not the time, so he said he would explain later. Studying the book carefully, he realized that he couldn't make sense of it, although he did get the gist of it. Claudia was surprised by this, and asked again if it was true. Vashio went forward and touched the huge ball. He began to use his magic. He went inside himself and saw a huge door. Opening it, a familiar huge demon appeared from there, standing in front of the protagonist. The huge demon began to give its energy to this capsule. Everything began to glow, so much so that Claudia covered herself with her hands. The system reported that the information about the restoration of the automaton would soon be updated. The protagonist immediately finished and simply exhaled. Claudia was surprised that the countdown stopped. She was very glad that she stopped, and said that her teacher was a real master. Vashio replied that he had used up quite a lot of magical power. Claudia was surprised with joy in her eyes that he could also transfer magical power. Vashio explained that he was simply following the instructions from the grimoire. The girl shouted that, after all, Vashio-sensei is a magnificent golden eagle. The protagonist was a little embarrassed, because she praised him and touched him with her big balls. He asked her not to call him that, because it was 20 years ago. Claudia noted that it was anyway. The girl laughed and admitted that she was so proud to be his student. Vashio's gaze was only on Claudia's jumping balls, and he thought and remembered her excited face. Then he came to his senses and asked what he was thinking about. The girl pointed at the book and asked what a grimoire was. The protagonist took the book and explained that it was an ancient magical instrument. He had never seen it in real life before. He believed that it probably contained a lot of lost magic, but he would have to learn the language to figure out what was written in it. Claudia noted that he had just managed to read it. Vashio replied that he had simply managed to figure out some of the words. Then he saw a note and was surprised. Claudia thought about it and suggested making it a method of researching their faction. The protagonist was surprised and asked if she was about the grimoire, and she agreed. The capsule immediately opened, and the protagonist and Claudia looked at the girl, and she looked at them. The robot asked them if they knew her master. The protagonist denied it and was surprised that she was talking. Claudia also said no. The robot understood them and began to slowly climb out of the capsule. She began to call her master and ask where he was. She apologized for sleeping for so long. Now that she was running, they could resume their research. The protagonist began to read the paper with a pitiful face. He handed her the paper, and the robot understood that it was a letter from the master. He wrote that his time was up, and it was time to pass the pen to the next master. He could not last long here. His magical powers were too meager to continue working with this grimoire and with her. He only wished that his successor would write a new page in the grimoire with her. But now he did not feel an ounce of regret. On the contrary, the days spent with her studying magic were glorious, and each day he looked forward to waking up. After all, that's what she was created for. After reading all this, the robot understood what the owner wanted to say. She thanked them for waking her up. She opened the door for them and asked them to leave. Claudia suggested that she go with them. The robot lay down in the capsule and said that without the owner there was no point in her existence. She would sleep until the owner returned. The protagonist turned and walked back. Claudia asked Vashio if he wanted to become her master, since it wasn't a bad idea, and she felt sorry for the robot. The protagonist apologized and said that he couldn't help her. Claudia smiled and added that Vashio had great magical powers. Vashio again replied that he couldn't, since he was just a humble biology teacher. He remembered what he had read in the paper, namely that the previous owner wanted his successor to write a new page into the grimoire along with it, because that was what it was created for. The protagonist thought about it and did not know what to do. Claudia ran after the protagonist and asked if he was really going to leave and just abandon her here. She kept calling for Vashio, but he just walked forward silently. He continued to think about what to do. We are shown another letter, which said that if he is reading this letter, he must be an amazing young man with outstanding magical abilities. Although age does not matter here. Maybe he is not young, but they digress from the topic. The book he holds in his hands is called The Black Leather Grimoire of Silence. The protector of this grimoire is one of the 7 ancient relics, and the girl automaton that lies before him. She is the guardian, entrusting it to someone capable enough to wield it and guard its secrets. He won't last long here. His magical powers are too meager to continue working with this grimoire and with her, but now he feels no regret. On the contrary, the days spent with her studying magic were glorious, and each day he looked forward to waking up. His time is up, and it is time to pass the pen to the next master. He only wishes that his successor will write a new page in the grimoire with her. After all, that's what it was created for. The protagonist thought that it wasn't about magic. One of the 7 relics was too heavy a burden for a simple biology teacher. There were people more worthy of this artifact. Claudia looked at the robot, and her face changed to a pitiful one. She started running after the protagonist and asked him to become her new master. The protagonist wanted to refuse her again, but Claudia asked him very strongly. She took his hand and said that she had just woken up and was now falling asleep again. She could not help her herself. So she asked him, as he had helped them once, to now lend a helping hand to her. The protagonist didn't know what to say, and Claudia interrupted him and said that she didn't know what happened to Sensei after they broke up, and she still didn't know what was bothering him. But to her, he would always be kind, reliable, and willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. Her cool Vashio sensei. The protagonist began to remember how Claudia reminded him of her own quote, and how Arya tearfully asked him to form a faction. Vashio thought he was pathetic, so pathetic that he couldn't make a decision without a kick in the ass from a student. The protagonist smiled and agreed, but being called the master was not very good for him. The girl was very happy, because she recognized her sensei. His face changed, and he admitted that he was very sorry for being such a bad teacher. He was going to tell her what happened someday. The octopus, hearing this, smiled and laughed, saying that she would wait, but noted that this awkwardness was part of Vashio sensei's charm. The protagonist did not understand whether it was a compliment. They returned back to the robot's room. He looked at her and remembered what the letter had said next. The previous owner had admitted that he had lied and had only one regret. This robot has a heart, and asked the new owner to give her a new name. Lots of love. The protagonist clicked on the capsule and greeted it. He called it Alice. He took her hand and said that her morning was full of light and hope. He called Alice to follow him. The robot was surprised when he called her Alice. The protagonist replied that he had given her that name and asked if she liked it. Alice understood and updated her name. She then asked if he was her master. Vashio, a little timidly, responded in the affirmative. At that moment, Claudia grabbed the protagonist by the hand and said that this was Vashio sensei and he was their teacher. Alice, hearing the name Vashio, updated the information. He was approved as the new owner. She was glad to meet him. The protagonist said that he thought the owner was unnecessary here. Later, the protagonist came to Lemon and was even more surprised because Vashio told him everything. Vashio went to the ghost tower at Lemon's request. He accidentally fell into the basement. He accidentally found a grimoire, one of the 7 ancient relics, and an automaton. He activated them and brought them here. The elf was simply shocked, and the director listened attentively. The protagonist admitted that, in general, that was how it was. The director had no idea that the grimoire was in the academy. He assumed that Limon knew about it, and that's why he sent Vashio-kun there. Lyman agreed, because he was an A-rank teacher and of course he knew about it. Claudia was also surprised. Claudia approached the director and asked the director if they could make the grimoire a research subject for their faction. The elf agreed, but noted that it would be a lot of work and asked Vashio if he could. The protagonist timidly replied that he would manage somehow. Moreover, all his students are straight A students. Arya and Claudia smiled in response. Alice objected and said that she was not a student. The protagonist agreed with her, but noted that there was no need to quibble over words. The director said that the application for the creation of a faction was officially accepted. They would convert the ghost tower into a dormitory. All that was left was to wait until the renovation was finished. The entire company left the office, and Vashio and Claudia immediately drooped. Vashio didn't understand why he had to live with a ghost. Claudia agreed with that. Arya intervened and asked them to calm down, because that ghost-san turned out to be very friendly and nice. The two were very surprised when they heard about a friendly ghost. The protagonist was surprised and asked Arya if she could talk to ghosts. The girl answered that they had a nice chat while they were missing somewhere. She had a lot of free time. Claudia said that she was sorry. But then Ghost-san was caught by Lemon-sensei. Vashio thought that this was how he wanted to help him. Alice was closely following this conversation. The protagonist immediately looked at her and told Claudia and Arya to pick out clothes for Alice. The robot replied that she was already dressed. Claudia objected and tried to subtly hint that she was too revealing. Arya added that, when looking at her, you don't know where to look. Claudia threw a jacket over her, and the protagonist said goodbye and left. Arya asked where he went. Vashio answered that he would be busy repairing the ghost tower, and the girls understood him. The girls took Alice by the hands and dragged her along. Alice wanted to go with the owner, but they wanted to get to know her better. Alice turned around and saw Vashio say goodbye to her. The girls went to buy clothes, and the protagonist came to the tower and saw the gnomes who started to repair their new house. Afterwards, the girls came there. Alice changed her clothes and told Vashio that she was back. He turned around and saw Alice wearing a maid's uniform and was surprised. Alice said that she had chosen the best outfit to serve the master. The gnomes began to whisper and asked what was going on and who these beautiful girls were. It was strange to them that three beauties fell in love with an old man. Claudia asked Vashio if Alice was really beautiful. He smiled and said that she was a beauty. The robot looked at his master in surprise. Then she looked embarrassed and lowered her head. Claudia laughed and asked why she was embarrassed. Alice replied that, as a robot, she could not feel embarrassed. Claudia laughed again and said that the corners of her mouth had lifted slightly. The robot replied that they had imagined it. Wash smiled and warned them that it was dangerous and that they had better not approach. Alice came forward and said that she could help with the repairs. The gnomes replied that, under no circumstances, because they could not allow Mist to help them, and asked not to worry. At that moment, Claudia picked up a huge beam, and Arya took a hammer. They said that they were monster girls. Alice took the box and explained that she was an automaton, which surprised the gnomes. Seeing this, they invited the girls to their hut. Immediately, a huge stone hanging on a rope began to crack. Alice, seeing this, predicted the fall of the stone. A huge weapon appeared from her hand, and she decided to eliminate the danger to the owner. She began loading the weapon, and moments later fired it from her hand, which greatly surprised the gnomes and Vashio. Alice reported that the liquidation was complete.